First thing off, welcome all. I'm Lucie Lalumière. I'm the president of Interactive Ontario. I think most of you already know us, but for those who don't, we represent the video game and interactive digital media industry in Ontario. So our whole purpose in life is to help grow the industry. And we want to create jobs. We want to be able to support people so they create those fantastic techno-creative jobs for many years in the future. So that's what we do. And we do it in various ways, including the iLunch series. So today we're going to focus on how do we manage remote teams and ensure the success of production. I think we've all been working a lot from home over the last few months, and we've adapted, but some companies have been able to learn a lot of lessons, and today the purpose is to share those lessons. But before I continue on that, I want to mention to you that with me today, we have Sarah Saucier from IO and Stephanie Greenall as well. So both Sarah and Stephanie are going to moderate your questions. And the questions, you have to post them, whether it's in the Zoom chat or on the Discord channel. So in theory, you're all muted right now. And we're doing this to make sure that we can manage this very short event. So please post your questions and we will moderate them. And also before I continue on the intro of the panel per se, I want to thank Ontario Creates. So Ontario Creates is our presenting partner. And they are also a great partner for the industry, as many of you already know. If you don't know them, please go to their website and check their grant programs. They're key to growing our industry as well with us. So back to what we're going to discuss today. We're very, very lucky to have two companies that have a different point of view on remote teams. One of them is larger, is Certain Affinity, and many of you already know Certain Affinity. They produce games such as World of Tanks, Call of Duty, Halo, and others, so AAA quality games, and they are an indie. And they have an office in Toronto, an office in Austin. So we're going to have the perspective of a larger organization. And then we have Areas of Star. So Area of Stars, they're smaller, growing, and in fact, if I look at my notes here, they were named as one of the top growing companies in Canada by the Globe and Mail this year. So lots of growth. They're producing engaging brand activation experiences. So again, a different point of view on managing remote teams. So we have three experienced managers from those two organizations. Rich Vogel, VP of Production and Online Services at Certain Affinity. Katie Eaton, Director of Operation and HR at Area of Stars. And Mikkel Stange, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, Stange, Managing Director, Area of Stars. So I'm going to ask all of them to introduce themselves further, and we'll start with Rich. Up to you, Rich.
How you doing? Yes, as she said, I'm VP of Production and Online Services for Certain Affinity, and my job is to make sure all the trains run on time and coordinate all the resources and budgets between all the projects we have going on at Certain Affinity. We have, as she mentioned, we have a studio in Toronto that our goal is to grow and grow and grow, and we have a studio in Austin, Texas. We picked Toronto because of the great city that it's in, and also the huge amount of talent that's in the area, as well as all the colleges that support that talent pool. So it's a very good choice for us. We actually have a great team up there that we work with. My background is I've been in online gaming for 25 years. I worked on Meridian 59, which was the very, very first one that was internet based, that you can actually go onto the internet and the web and download the client and play it. And then Ultima Online was the second one I worked on and launched for Electronic Arts. And then from there, I worked and formed a studio because I love staying in Austin for Sony, and I did Star Wars Galaxies for them. Then after Star Wars Galaxies, the expansion, and then I formed another studio in Austin for BioWare. And I've been knowing those guys from BioWare in Edmonton for a very long time. We got to work together and worked for them for 8 years. Worked on Dragon Age as well as Star Wars: The Old Republic, which was a huge project. Actually, is where I learned a lot about managing remote workforce. We had 550 people on that project across the globe, St. Petersburg to Shanghai to Edmonton to Montreal to Washington area, DC area, and then Austin. So, and so we learned a lot with that. I did, and from there, when that was launched and we turned it into free to play, I then went to form another studio with Bethesda Game Studio in Austin, and we worked on Doom, and then we worked on Fallout 76 for them. And so that, and then I after that worked for Certain Affinity, and I've been working there for about 3 years, and we formed the studio in Toronto to help us expand in that workforce up there. And we work on a unannounced unannounced IP with Toronto studio now. So that's a little background of who I am, and I'll let Mikkel take it from here. Mikkel.
Thank you. That's a great tracker. There's many of my favorite games in there.
Good.
Yeah, my name is Mikkel Stange. I'm from Array of Stars, located in Toronto. I am originally from Denmark, came over 3 years ago, and worked with this studio. Come from a slightly bigger background from a bigger strategic design company, which is one of the kind of bigger cross-functional design companies. I've been working, I have a business background, but I've been working with design since strategic design and design thinking really start being a thing in the world, with IDEO and Tim Brown being the forerunners of that. So been working cross-disciplinary with pretty much creating user experiences that solve problems for people in any field. So I've been working in healthcare, banking, finance, insurance, waste disposal, a lot of different areas. But you know, it never stops to surprise me how many places in the world require well-designed touch points. So that's kind of the place that I'm coming from. Started working with Array of Stars a couple of years ago, and the focus of this agency is really to be creative tech and create experiences digitally with very kind of the newest tools we have in the digital toolbox. This agency is anchored in a history of web design and both for you know, bigger screens and phones. But with all that knowledge and UX and know-how also comes the ability to create experiences outside of devices now, which now the spatial environment is coming into play. So the last 2 to 4 years, we've been really diving into virtual reality, augmented reality, and anything in between, really. So we're creating experiences in spaces, both physical and virtual. So that's really where we are. And I think an interesting kind of little bow at the end of this tale is that with the current development in the world and being in lockdown since the spring or the winter, we've seen what we do being taken much more seriously. So even though we're a bit smaller, we're, you know, just under the 20-person mark, a small studio here in Toronto. What we do can really, you know, because we can bring objects into people's homes and have them go from there into an online store, then suddenly it's much more relevant and much less barrier to entry for these bigger brands to work with that. So I think there's been some interesting learnings for us in this process of staying at home and still trying to work or working. So that's our agency. Geographically, we are in Toronto. We have been using remote teams to support on very niche production type elements, you know, getting 3D modeling done in South America, having motion done in France. So we've been working across the globe with that for years, not in the same scale with hundreds of people, but still managing across timelines and time zones. So that's a bit about Array of Stars. And with me, I have Katie Eaton, my colleague.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mikkel. That was a really great explanation of Array of Stars and what we do. My name's Katie Eaton. I'm the Director of Operations and HR at Array of Stars. I come from a project management and production background, working across a few different of the large Toronto-based digital agencies, and have somewhat recently shifted within Array of Stars into the operations and HR role. So alongside the operational aspect of my role, it's also my job to coordinate and manage resource forecasting and just the more people, human side of the business. So that's the side I'll be coming from. So Mikkel, I'll pass it back to you if I think you're going to kick off some questions.
Yes, thank you, Katie. So I'm going to ask Rich a little bit about his business. Thanks for the great intro. So diving into the teams and the scopes you manage, the first question here would be if you could elaborate a little bit on those sizes. How big are the projects? How many people are involved in one team working across multiple locations, and what are the upsides and challenges in that regard?
Yeah, we have one project that has about 125 people on it, and they're located between Toronto and Austin. We have about almost 30 people in Toronto growing. We're trying to grow that studio more. And we have most of our people in Austin, but we also outsource for art. We have art being done in Shanghai. We have art being done in St. Petersburg. There are lots of different places that we do art outsourcing, and that means concepting to 3D modeling to all sorts of things. Our company is about 250 people total, including Toronto. We have, like I said, most of our base is in Austin right now, but our goal is to grow the Toronto office over time to be a big part of our business. And so learning how to work remotely has always been challenging, especially in these times, because when you're developing games, it's a very collaborative effort, as we all know, and it takes, usually people in a room brainstorming, especially when you're in the beginning phases of development on a lead development project, or even co-dev. We do a lot of co-dev development. So we have about 4 co-dev projects going on right now. The largest one has about 100 people. The smallest one has about 35 people on it. And there are all sorts of publishers that we work with. You can look at our background, our website. You can kind of figure out who they are out. And we do a tremendous amount of work. We don't usually take outsourcing. We actually have a creative role in everything we take. So when we're given stuff, we actually given a lot of the creative aspect of that when we develop a product. So we're kind of left alone and say, hey, do this, and we do it for them. It's been very nice. All our work has been that way from day one. One of the challenges we have, again, is everyone was working remotely in March. We transitioned very quickly because we're a co-dev house and because we had development working between Toronto and us, we already had things in the cloud. So we already had all our source control in the cloud. We already had our repositories, our Convergent, all our wiki stuff was in the cloud. So it was really easy for us to get out. Just meant getting our boxes all set up and increasing our bandwidth at our studio so people could go into our studio and go out. It's actually been pretty easy. I think it took us about 2 weeks to transition 250 people, which is pretty good, very quickly. And again, we use collaborative tools. One of the things we use, we're investigating right now and using a lot is Miro, M-I-R-O. It's a collaborative whiteboard tool. It's awesome. It does a lot more than just your virtual whiteboards. It does a whole bunch of things that are very collaborative in real time. And that is exactly, what we're looking at. We're actually looking at setting up Discord channels for people. We have Slack. We use a ton of Slack. We use a ton of Zoom. And actually, Zoom and Slack are what we use a lot to communicate with each other in real time, actually. Those work really well. Miro is another one that works well. So those tools have been helping us. One of the big things, this is why you see a lot of delays in games this year, is funneling is hard. Funneling is hard because you're usually in a dailies room every day. Everyone gets together in dailies room and looks at the game, and we triage the game. We break down the bugs. We fix the bugs. We figure what to polish, what not to polish, what to fix, what not to fix. Those things are very difficult to do remotely. And so those are things that as we approach that, we're going to look for new tools to help us with that, especially with the video streaming, because we normally rely a lot on that on games. So that's something we're constantly looking for to figure out better ways of doing it. And we're evolving as this goes along, because we know in our minds that we're not going to see this change until maybe next year around this time, to be very honest with you. I think a lot of companies are coming to that. Even the vaccine was announced recently. We still don't really feel comfortable, no earlier than the summer to even look back. And it's certainly not going to be the same, right? We're certainly not going to be the same the way we were for a while. So we're constantly evolving. We're having our office redesigned so that it would be better for the space when we get back. Because when we're a creative company, and creative companies, they usually are not office based, as we all know, and we have to figure out ways of distancing ourselves and protecting ourselves as we're in the office. And we're looking at all sorts of things that other companies are doing as well. But for now, we're going to be remote. We're going to be remote for a while. So that's kind of a summary of who we are, what we're doing, and how many projects we got going and how we're handling it.
Actually, can I interrupt, because you said something really important about the types of problems that you're really experiencing, especially coming from a company that has so much experience with remote work. And you had mentioned that you were having, the issues were coming in your dailies and debugging and that type of collaborative work that was mostly done in studios. And I'm also wondering, from Array of Stars, if you could talk a little bit about the problems that you've been having when you transitioned into your remote work as a team.
Yeah, I am happy to speak about that. I think there's a lot of similarities in the way we've approached the transition. Also being a digital company, we also had, I would say, a fairly easy transition to not being in the office. We already had some team members working on a flex, working from home situation, so that just went to a full-time. I'd say some of the biggest challenges for us, especially in the beginning, was around what I would call soft information. So that note that somebody just drops on your table or tells you in passing, I just talked to this guy or this woman or this whatever, he said so-and-so, just keep that in mind. That information doesn't really get relayed until you have a next scheduled touch point. Especially if everybody's busy with meetings, and that delay or that ball drop that might happen there, it might be a detail, but if enough details accumulate, it could have an effect on what you're working on. So I think we've seen a few times some dissonance happening with people not having enough information, or the classic, oh, I thought you saw. So that's been happening sometimes, and what that has required us to do is we've been organically experimenting with Scrum type check-ins, more informal settings where it's okay to say, oh, by the way, because for every other meeting, we have very strict agendas because we don't want people to get screen fatigue. So we try to keep it to a minimum, we try to be efficient and not be yapping too much. So I think we've gotten even harder on having agendas, having even timed agendas, 5 minutes for that, 10 minutes for that, and being totally okay ending 15 minutes before if we get through the agenda fast. So that's very efficient, but there's really no room for, oh, by the ways. So we've been organically, first we had a daily check-in. Now we have, for some team members, converted that to a daily kind of Slack checking in, saying, here's a few items for the day. If there's anything that raises a red flag, let's just coordinate a touch point for that specific thing. But being able to give pieces of informal information to each other has been one of the biggest challenges, I think. And we're still organically trying to find ways to do it better, because informal check-ins can also get too many and too much. So again, like it's a dynamic process. I won't say we found the perfect recipes, but currently a mix of having a Slack kind of 9 a.m. here's some information and a bi-weekly open half an hour has helped us a lot, just getting those conversations going that we would have had between 11:30 and noon, where we're having a sandwich and just chatting up in the kitchen.
By the way, I just want to comment on that. I totally agree with you. One of the things that those 10-minute walk-by conversations you talk about, things like that people drop, become Zoom calls or something like that take 30 minutes when they shouldn't, right? We set up a Slack bot to do the dailies, and then we realized people like to see FaceTime more than just a Slack bot. And so we started doing dailies with Slack or Zoom, so people could talk to each other in person. We found that the isolation, by the way, was getting to people, and the fatigue. The Zoom fatigue idea is so true. We had to tighten up our agendas. A great suggestion you mentioned, which is absolutely true. We had to tighten up our meetings because people were, and then our managers were getting more bogged down because they had more overhead that they had to track remotely than they did at the office, just doing walk-bys or just coming by, hey, how's this going? And they get an update immediately, right? And again, like you mentioned, Nicholas, some of those gets dropped or not talked about, or people thought it was talked about. And so we're actually also trying to figure out ways of dealing with those 10-minute conversations that always happen when you're together, because that dialogue is so important when you're trying to build product. So.
And I'm actually going to jump in again because you mentioned another really important part of this, which is the Zoom fatigue and isolation, specifically
Yes.
isolation. And I'm wondering if Katie, when we were pre-talking, you talked a little bit about the types of things you do in your HR, with your HR hat on, in helping the team through those types of things. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the one thing that my mind always comes back to when we're all working remotely is that we need to sort of remind each other that we're all human. We all are going through this weird time in our own way, and checking in on each other, I think, is just super important. You mentioned screen fatigue. There are a ton of meetings, probably more than there were before because of the lack of the walk-by conversations. But I do think that taking time to, even though we're chatting all the time about projects, we're not necessarily checking in on a human level as much as we used to when we were in person. So I think, to answer your question, I would say one of the main things that we've been doing is booking individual periods of time where we're checking in on people. And that's not to talk about projects. It's not to talk about feedback for them or any concerns or anything like that. It's just checking in on them and asking them how they're doing. Because again, just remembering that we're all people and we're all going through this weird time in our own way. So yeah, that would solve that for me.
And then you also mentioned something really cool about like game nights, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah, we started out having socials once a week, which we used to have in the office. We would just kind of, like all crack a beer or whatever it was around our desks on Thursdays. But obviously we're not doing that anymore. Certainly not connecting in the same ways that we used to. So yeah, we started out organizing socials. So that would be, we tried a bunch of different things. We didn't want to, as mentioned, we didn't want to add to the screen fatigue. So we played with a few different options. We did a trivia a few times where I just put together a bunch of trivia questions and everyone kind of played. It was like Jeopardy, but not as cool. And then we went online and played some online games. So I think it was called Passwords, things like that. And those types of like hangman games online. So we just sort of played some simple games that kept each other communicating and chatting on a more light, fun level, where we didn't have to discuss our day-to-day projects and those types of things.
we encourage that within the teams as well to do certain things as well as a studio wide. We do one every week. We
Oh, that's
have,
great.
yeah, because exactly what you said, because we do the exact same thing Fridays. We all get together, relax, we open the beer kegerator, you know, and everyone has something to drink for a couple hours at the office, and you can't do that anymore. So basically, how do you do that? And we also do like, we give them like gifts. So in the mail, there'll be little surprise gifts that'll come every once in a while to say thank you and we appreciate you, you know, here's something for that. We've been working really, we have actually a COVID strike team at our studio that just dedicated to figuring out ways of developing social interactions with people, because there are people who enjoy that, and then they're the introverts. And so we always had to figure out how can we get the introverted people involved and get in contact with people, because I think it's really important to do that. One group of people, our tech artists, did a virtual lunch where they ordered from a Grubhub or something, and they all got it delivered at noon, and they all sat around and just talked, right, while they're eating lunch about anything, didn't matter, right? So that's kind of a way to get some of the people who normally wouldn't do that to do that and be part of it. So again, it's all kind of evolving as we move along to figure out better ways, because there is a psychological way that we all forget about, that we really, as you said, that we really do need to think about. That's important, Katie, and that's so true. There are people behind here. And some people handle it well, and some people really don't handle it very well. They're very, very tense. If you can imagine during our presidential race, what the stress was on a lot of people here in both parties, right? Both ways. So, and you always got to think about that as you're moving forward.
And we have some questions coming up in our chat. Katie, do you want to speak a little bit more to very similarly the idea of having introverts and other people who are not participating in virtual events? Specifically, if there's people maybe that are growing distant from your studio, and this is a question that was posed by Jean Salvin in our chat that we've talked about a little bit, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like to add, as we have another question that says, I'd love to hear more about how you design connecting and social events for introverts.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely crossed our minds and plates as well. I would say there's a few different aspects there. There's the fact that we want to make social interactions available to the team, but we also don't want to force them on the team members that don't want to be dialing in and talking about their pet or something to the whole company. Some people don't love that. They didn't love it when we were in the office, and they're not going to love it over Zoom either. So just offering different avenues as well. Using Slack for that has been helpful. We have a Slack social channel where people can just drop in anything they're interested in or want to chat about, and people just reply in that thread, or it sparks other conversations. So that's one area of that. And then Rich, you also mentioned, sending little gifts and sending lunches and things like that. That always helps people kind of feel special and know that they are still part of a team, even if they're not getting the water cooler jokes that they are used to getting from pre-COVID times. And then the last thing I'll mention again is just having those check-ins. I'm lucky I'm in an HR role, so it's not weird for me to book time to just chat with people with no major structure to the conversation, just kind of conversations and checking in on people. So I think just making people know everyone on the team is on the team because they're valuable and we care about them, and we want to make sure that they know that, and whatever route we can find to do that, we're trying to take advantage of.
Thank you. There's also a very quick question. I'm curious if people do social work events and game nights inside or outside of work hours.
We've done them inside, but in the latter part of the day. That itself has come with the challenges of some people being tired at that time, just tired in their brains. But we've kept it to the official work hours because we didn't want it to affect people's ability to have downtime or attend to other family duties or similar things. We all know, especially when the schools were closed and daycare was closed, that that was extra challenging for some people, and couples doing double shifts and whatnot. So we've done that. And I think I saw a really good question around onboarding, both doing social events for introverts and also onboarding during lockdown. And I'd say, um, to me, in my understanding from a management perspective, um, a social event for an introvert is not a social event with many people.
No.
It's a one-to-one. So what so two things. One, we have onboarded two key people during COVID who have both been in the office once, and that was for an interview before the lockdown, but never really met the team or interacted or anything like that. And it does become a separation if you're not mindful about talking about something else than work. So actually, next week I have booked a meeting with one of these people, which is about nothing. So it's or we talked about it, and she expressed an interest in knowing, talking about stuff that's not work. Like, how are you? Like, what are you interested in? What are you as a person? Like really genuinely wants to know the rest of the team and handling that team feeling. So we're probably going to talk about interior design and cooking and something like that, and maybe like what our favorite beer or wine is. Just like normal things that interest us. It's kind of what our social Slack challenge does, but on a human level. So I think actually from when we talk about management overhead, which is the extra hours you have to invest in just being a person with the people on your team, I think that is an extra investment we have to make with people coming together face to face and just not having an agenda, because that's really the only way you used to get to know people, when you could speak to them in person. And now we have to emulate that somehow in a way. And what we're doing currently is trying to book, if it's not possible with a socially distant physical hello where you can meet and walk next to each other in a park, then at least you can meet online and chat about non-work stuff for a while and just get to know each other and have that kind of connection where you feel like you actually have a colleague instead of just a person on a camera.
Yeah, we've onboarded about 40, almost 40 people since COVID. So we actually had a whole onboarding. We had a whole video interview process, everything all worked out and established pretty quickly with our recruiters. And then once they're on, they have an onboarding process that where mentors set up with somebody when they come on board. We actually, for people in the, we give them virtual tours of the office. We actually set up a Confluence page that has everything necessary for the onboarding person. We're working on one for every project now, so that when people come on board the project, they know exactly what it is and who's doing what and why. And then that personal interaction that you mentioned, Nikki, which is so important, is to figure out, talk to people and get to know them, because they never met anybody, yet in the company really. So that's really important. We're hoping that things would have gone a little better for us, that we could have actually done these little lunches where we could separate, which you probably could separate, outside. We have a little area in the back of our office that we could actually meet and talk, I think, pretty safely. Things like that are important to us too, is making sure that we onboard people properly on the projects and that they're not left alone, that they have people to interact with, they knew who to talk to. And again, a lot more process had to be involved in that, because now it is remotely versus, you bring them all, you do orientation with them in the office. You don't do that anymore. So we have to do that virtually now.
And that's actually a really great segue into something that I was personally interested in, which is the skill base. I think that happens when you shift like this. What skills are the most important for a project manager and your leads to have when working with remote teams, but also when onboarding new people?
One of the things we do is, like for Toronto, they're never seen as an in-source house. We never do that. They're part of the team. They're integrated with the team day one. They do all the stand-ups with us. There's no separation of the groups at all. And that's really important, in my opinion. And they have their voice matters, the way we integrate it. And we have managers in Toronto managing people in Austin. And we like that because integrating the teams like that and not separating the studios works really well for us because they feel like they're involved in the project from day one and feel committed just like everyone else does. And with remote, it actually makes the communications easier actually with the people who are outside the office, because now we all have to do it. We're all on the same page. We're all equal now. It's no longer the people in the office versus the people outside of the office anymore. It's and I think that's helped a lot in communications wise. It certainly has. So that's been a very big benefit for us actually, is working that way. Again, it requires the mental note that these people are just as much a part of your team as your team, anyone there locally. So.
Yeah, I would also like to add that, I mean, your question around what are the skills that are most important for any project manager, whether it's client projects or internal tasks or goals like onboarding a new talent. I think a simple answer would be communication in these times is super key. Just almost even over explaining things at this point is great. Keeping organized, because I think it's easier for things to fall through the cracks when we're not seeing each other and reminding each other things in person all the time. And patience. Patience, again, you did ask me to put on my human HR hat, so I'm doing that again. But I think patience, again, is very key in these times. Different priorities outside of work also are a major something to keep in mind, because everyone has different things going on around them, kids running or nobody around. Either way, it's a different way that they're living and a different thing that they're going through. So yeah, patience, I think, is one of those skills to keep top of mind through this time.
I totally agree, and that's a great point. Soft skills are real critical right now, and especially with the managers. We have to realize people have kids, and we don't have kids going to school in a lot of places because of COVID. So they're virtual, by the way, so they have to spend time with their kids. We have to all kind of realize that and work around their schedules. That's why we have a core hour policy that we make sure we enforce, and we don't do crunch. We are a company that believes in quality of life in our workplace and at home. And that's really important for us, every project we take, because especially now, because the problem is there's no separation of office and home anymore for a lot of people. Now, for people who are contractors and consultants, this is pretty normal, but for people who aren't, it's not. And it's very hard because you're sitting here at this like my desk right now. I used to play games here, and I can't play games here anymore. So I have to go play on the console because I'm tired of being in this office all day. And I love playing games at night. So, I mean, I literally had to think about, well, maybe I could take that outside garage and convert it into an office. So I have a space that I can call my own, so I don't feel like I'm working all the time. And this is where a lot of people feel. And so we have to be cognitive of that as a group, and putting the HR hat on as a manager too. And that's why we do things like core hours. We don't have meetings outside, like after our core hours, very rarely, unless it's absolutely something possibly has to happen. Because we have someone in China or something we're communicating with, we have to be in that kind of time zone change. But we are very careful about that. And again, really being empathetic, being understanding, being patient, being a good communicator and well organized for a manager is key. Because now, as your role in this new COVID, your management responsibilities, in my opinion, has grown. Now, not shrunk. Because now you can't just walk by and talk to people anymore in the office. You actually have to spend time to talk to people outside, and that takes good scheduling.
I have another question that's come up a lot in some of the circles I'm in with educators as well. And at most social events, you can make a diplomatic escape from unwanted conversation. Politely excuse yourself from it. How do you supply the same option via Zoom? Do you allow muted video off options and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we say is when we're in a meeting, we generally say, please people put mute unless you're talking. Generally, if it's a larger group, we ask people to show stills and only have the video talking, the person talking. You know, there's what I call Zoom etiquette that we try to do. But we also like to see people's faces at times too, because I think that's a kind of connection I think is very important versus just showing people stills. And so we do request, as you know, the things we've learned over the 9 months now, good Lord, it's that long, 9 or 10 months, that I think seeing people's face and hearing them and talking to them and seeing the emotion behind them is, I think, very important.
And another great question that's actually popped up I'd like to throw in here is, have you guys had team members make life choices during the lockdown, like moving farther away from the office or things like that, that will make in-person work harder or impossible when lockdown ends? And how will you handle work from home after this is all over?
So we have people who've asked to be near their parents because of this situation. And we have set up, you know, we have to, if they're a full-time employee, we have to set up in the United States, we have to set up a presence in that state. And we have done that 3 or 4 times now for people. And we continue to do that and evaluate that as long. And as long as they're doing their work, they can stay there as long as they want. Certain positions, when we get back to post-COVID, we'll have to see how it goes. One of the things we're going to do is, while we're in transition, even if we have people working in the office, we are not using the conference rooms for calls. Everyone's going to be on Zoom. So everyone is equal. There is no people in a conference room versus the outsider versus the insider. That's the thing that I've learned a lot, is make sure we're on equal footing all the time through this whole process. So people don't feel outside. They feel like they're still part of the same company. So yes, we have done that, and there's been several people who have done that. They've moved to all different places around the United States, and some of them have been asked to do foreign. So we're open to it, because it really doesn't, to us, it doesn't really matter. We're not in the office anyway.
And what about you guys, Katie and Mikkel?
Yeah, we've had a few people ask about leaving the country even for a few months at a time, and same sort of answer. It doesn't really have a huge effect on us, so we're pretty open to it. Again, it does somewhat depend on the role, how far they can go, because sometimes they will be required to have to come help out with a tech a piece or something like that. So it definitely is somewhat dependent on the role, but we're certainly very open to the possibility, because as if we've learned anything through this time, it's that we are at least the same amount, if not more productive from home in most cases. So yeah, I would say we're very open to it as well.
And then that actually, another question that's been posed is very similar to when you were talking about you missed those 10-minute conversations, that sort of thing. In office, a lot of learning is happening through that osmosis, and often by overhearing a conversation or simply the turn your chair and ask type interactions. How do you replicate this in work from home situation? And how do you properly support your junior staff who typically learn a lot through just listening?
That is a really good question that we're trying to figure out too. I mean, I don't, be very frank with you, that's a great question. We try to have, again, using tools like Miro, where everyone could be on in this virtual whiteboard and move things around in real time and talk to each other in real time, and people can be observers. With Slack, we have observers and then people in the Slack channel that need to be in the Slack channel. And the observers actually help. They look at what's going on. They see with Slack, you have the history of what everyone's saying. You have pinups, you have other things like that people can track how decisions are made and why decisions are made. And we have brainstorming groups. We're looking at Discord as another way to bring people together in private rooms and just chat away and figure out things like that. Again, that is a huge gap right now. Absolutely, especially for the junior people. I agree. The one thing that I would say is our discipline. We broke certain Affinity out into discipline. We have studio directors like for art, programming, and design, and they handle all the training and everything else for that design. They're not project based, those people, and they handle all the reviews and the different leveling and help with recruiting, but they also help with training. So we have actually gone and gotten courses and things like that, and people all register for those courses and they learn virtually together. For substance designer is a good one. There's lots of courses on that. Houdini is another one that we've done training on. So we're actually looking for ways of doing just that, is providing especially discipline leads, looking for each discipline and figuring out what gaps they have and how we can help facilitate the learning there virtually.
Yeah, I'd say some things we've done is actually to turn it around and have our juniors do presentations to the rest of the team. So kind of turning around the learning. So one of the, either the manager or more senior person will, together with a junior, identify a place we need researched, or we need some information, we need some prototyping in that area, and then turn it around to an all staff lunch and learn. And we've done that for some, the newest AR tools, the newest kind of like hand tracking or whatever it is we're working with, do a little project and make it, again, like actually turning into kind of an interesting social where everybody, even the people who are not working with that specific technology, is learning something. That has been one way to keep, keep the fire going with people who are more junior, but I agree, we haven't found the best solution to this challenge yet, but that's just one of the things we've done.
Great, thank you. And then with the interest of only 10 minutes left in this hour, I wanted to turn the conversation to project costs. And I know it can be more or less sensitive, but I'm wondering if you can talk, if all of you can talk a little bit about the impact that this has had on your project costs.
I would say time, because things are taking a little longer, especially in the beginning, to learn how to work together remotely. We've made all our milestones, but we definitely are scoping appropriately for our deliverables based on people working remotely and what that cost would mean. Certain tasks are taking longer than normal because of it, and I think that we are putting that in our schedules to make sure we buffer that. There is more management overhead costs. You don't necessarily see that in a budget, but you definitely see that in your managers because forcing them to take time off. That's the other thing is, why am I taking time off? I can't do anything. Where am I going? Right. And we have to tell people, no, you seriously need to disconnect for a week or two, or do something. I don't care. Drive your car somewhere, or get a camper and do something that you can think that's non-COVID, that would reduce your risk for getting COVID. But that's the other thing about it is that mental health problem, people working too much, but it has increased the burden on managers considerably. I'll have to say that. And it's just something the managers who didn't have that DNA before are having to get that DNA of how to touch point with their employees a lot more. Again, it's psychological, as Katie says, it's just not the job, it's figuring out how they're feeling, what they're doing. Another thing is, I'll be honest with you, with us is recruiting. It's people are now not having to worry about borders anymore. So for us, it's been very challenging because we have people leaving because they're offered a lot more. We're in Indie Studio, they're offering a lot more money. California salaries for Austin area is crazy, but they are. So it's sometimes hard to compete. And then that social glue that everyone says, I love working with my peers, right? Is kind of, when we're this way for this long, it's not like that glue anymore, right? It's coming apart a little bit. So that's affecting us a little bit, is the recruiting side of things. But a lot of people, what's interesting is a lot of people have left CA, come back because they love the culture that we have, which is awesome. That just happened recently with someone left and they came back 3 months, and they said, well, I don't want to leave where I'm at, the state, but can I come back and work for you? I said, sure, absolutely. No problem, because again, we're virtual. But again, I mean, I think that's been a real challenge for us, is The cost, I think, it does take longer to do what we're doing, certain things that we're doing, especially in entertainment that we build, finding the fun and things like that. So we have to build those into schedules, which means they do go up. Our costs do drive up a little bit. When you're talking, if you look at the game industry, you see all these products being delayed. You know, you saw many products out there, big games being delayed, like Ubi's been delaying, and other CK Project's been delaying games. That's a huge cost. When you delay a game a quarter or more, that's a huge amount of money you're talking about. When you have a large team of, you know, a lot of these AAA games have teams of over 200 people, some of them do. And you can imagine what it's like to delay a game like that for months is a cost, big cost.
Has the shift to remote work, because you were a little bit less in studio, has that had impact on your project costs at all?
I'd say definitely on the project management side, it's just more meetings, more calls, more, I'd say very granular to-do and task and Scrum list, checking off boxes. Also with the client side, because we're a consultancy or work as an agency, we have to keep the same level of management of our team on the client side. So how's their team doing? Are they getting in touch with all the people they need to do? Did they share the latest revision with their internal team for review and get the review back to us in timely fashion? So that is more of a hurdle, because again, you have to have touch points, you have to have video calls to do it. So there is an added cost. I won't say we've probably just dialed up the project management cost a little bit of the work, because we just know that's there. We haven't, from the development, creative, and these types of tasks, they are typically just done by, you know, the people who are the specialists. So that hasn't gone up a lot. It's more in the friction in between.
Is it inappropriate for me to ask who covers these costs?
We're an agency, so we build it into the budget to the client, and we don't hide it. If anybody asks us why the project management will have the portion of the budget that it does, we have a very clear answer. It's not made up, it's based on facts, and they can probably give a nod to that, because their situation will be the same.
The same with us. So we do a ton of CoDev as well. We have clients who do. In fact, the clients actually have delayed a lot too, because they're just kind of learning how to do this as well.
Okay, and just one final question that's come through from Lucy. How do you think this experience will change how you work with teams post-pandemic?
What is post-pandemic?
Oh,
Yeah.
they got you there. Yeah. Let's dream that. Yeah, well, that's a good question. That's a good question too. Are you planning for a permanent situation here? Is there a post-pandemic, and how has these experiences really changed your perspective on work moving forward?
I think as a business in our logistical setup, we are gradually permanently changing. Our approach to working in a space will not ever be the same, pandemic or not. We will probably be remote much more time. Our office will be smaller. Maybe our office will be a boardroom and a tech demo room, and nothing else. We won't have like 10 desks sitting next to each other. So I think we're definitely, and we're in these conversations on the management team at the moment, like, for how long do we keep a certain amount of square feet available for, you know, occasional use? Is that better serviced by WeWork? You know, there's many options right now, but I think the location fixation will be gone. That's for sure.
I actually think that a lot of companies are going to go that route. I think we're probably looking at, after COVID, that we'll probably continue having people work remotely. Our office space will not be the same. It will not be the same it is today. That I can tell you. Before the COVID happened, it's not. It's going to be completely different the way it's built and the way we work. And I think you're going to find a lot of companies are going that way now. because once you get the muscle memory to do this, it's just why go back sometimes to doing the way you did before, because it's expensive in certain places. If you could do it in a far less expensive area and less footage, it saves you on overhead and people enjoy and like it. I do think the human interaction side, especially in closing a game, I think it's going to need spaces, but those spaces are going to be a lot different than they were before. That's what I'll say. And the way they're designed and the way that people are meeting and how it's done. And I think that's the future of where we're heading in a lot of industry. And that's just not ours, just not in gaming, especially in the tech.
Okay. Katie, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up? We're just at 2:00 now.
Yeah, I would say I agree with both Mikkel and Rich there. We've learned, if anything, that we can absolutely do it all remotely. There's certain little tweaks to try and keep the normalcy there. But as we figure that out, we realize it's a lot more effective in a lot of ways as well. So I agree. I don't think it'll ever go back to the way it was before.
Thank you. And we've just hit 2:00. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying thank you so much for letting us into your worlds for this hour, giving us that insight into the challenges, the solutions, and everything that you've been going through. It's been really, really insightful. And thank you for taking the time to answer all of the questions. We really, really appreciate you being here. It was absolutely fantastic. Hopefully we'll have you again sometime and maybe even one day in person. So
thank you so much for having
us.
It's been very
thanks a lot.
fun.
And before we close the room down, I also want to say thank you to Ontario Creates for supporting the iLunch, and the whole series. Also to all of our speakers and to Stephanie Greenall for helping to produce the event and promote the event. Thank you. And to all of you for being here and joining us today. Hopefully you'll come to the next one as well and have learned something from this conversation. If you would like to join us, we have a town hall that started mainly to address the emergency situation when the pandemic started and has since evolved to continue to address the most pressing issues in the interactive digital media industry in Ontario. And that will be on the 17th. There is a link to that in the Zoom chat channel as well. So if you have experience with the next one is Ontario Creates, who will be really addressing changes to Ontario Creates. So if you have experience with Ontario Creates and would like to join us to ask some questions, please do. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.